Good morning, and here we are in the grasp of a new week. Let's see what the future brings forth, I suppose. Um, One thing to mention today, obviously, there's been a lot of talk in the press, in the media, on social media, and so on about the latest Meta requirements or instructions regarding content on Facebook and so on, about the LGBTQI plus community and the removal in message of certain themes, and how it's now allowed to say that members of the community are essentially mentally ill. And I just obviously a lot of people have been very upset about this, rightly so. Um, we heard this morning that Facebook offices have removed tampons from men's bathroom in case, obviously, there are any trans males there that would still require those products, and how that's a terrible thing in their view. And also, the civil rights director of Facebook has just quit, which is never a particularly good sign for a company. Now, obviously, this is one company, but why does it matter? Because Facebook is still used by a lot of people. And obviously, last week we also heard that they are going to remove the fact checking, truth checking, or whatever methodology from their algorithms, and they're going to rely on a different way of doing things. And it's really interesting because, and the reason I want to mention it from a slightly different angle, was that an acquaintance of mine said, "Well, what does it really matter? You know, it's social media. Most people aren't on social media anyway, especially things like Facebook. And to be honest, I mean, people are going to be mean to the LGBTQI plus community. I got to do that anyway. So why does it matter whether they are officially allowed to do it or not? Because even previous content sort of restrictions weren't doing much good. People were still being mean. So why does it matter? Well, I'll tell you why I think it matters. Because yes, this is absolutely true. If you're going to make disparaging remarks or homophobic, transphobic remarks on social media, you're probably going to do it anyway, whether there's any filters or not, because you are so inclined. But what this sort of move does, it legitimizes hatred. So basically, it's saying, Facebook or Meta or Mark Zuckerberg did not invent transphobia, homophobia, and so on. But what they do by this sort of actions is that they legitimize it. Just like, in England, Brexit didn't invent racism or closeted racism, but they somehow fueled it and validated it. Just like Trump did not invent racism, misogyny, and everything else in the US, but he validates it. And I think this is part of the problem. If you are, as a public company that has some sort of pull in the kind of public psyche, in the creation of kind of shared content, and you are taking this sort of move, you are never going to convert people that were already there. But you are doing to people that maybe have thought twice about things, or maybe would have thought that actually being abusive or violent towards a person of the community was possibly not socially acceptable. You have made that acceptable. So, if anything, what Facebook is doing, for example, or Meta is doing, is giving the message out that actually abusive behavior towards the community is okay now. You still shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't do it because it's not nice, but it's okay. We don't mind if you do, right? So again, they haven't invented any of this stuff, but they are not validating it. Just like people like Trump are validating transphobia and so on, J.K. Rowling and others, because of their position and their platform. They are now saying it's okay to behave in this way. It's valid. It's allowed. It's what we expect, right? So, what does that mean for the community? Well, clearly, there's a lot of anxiety out there, and rightly so. But for us as allies, the only thing we can do is actually maybe double our kindness, double our allyship, and just basically fight against the invalidation, this kind of validation of transphobia. It's more than just saying, "Oh, I'm going to go off Facebook." It's more than just saying, "Oh, I'm going to go off social media altogether," whatever. Because let's face it, for a lot of members of the community, social media is where it's at. They might live in localities where they have to stay closeted, they have to stay hidden, they have to stay just to be safe. So therefore, one of the few places where they can react and they can kind of interact with other people is online. I have clients who are not out to their families for safety reasons, whether it's economic safety, whether it's actual physical safety. So the only way that they can engage with the community is online. So, of course, if that online is now even more of a toxic space, they are really isolated, which I suppose is part of the objective of all these measures. So I suppose what we can do is to create a safe space online as much as we can, rather than just run away from it. That's one. And obviously try to create a safe space as much as we can in our surroundings. We can't change the world in a global sense. We can't so think, oh, well, we're going to take over the world, do this, that, and the other. I always say this to people, think global but act local. We can't change Mark Zuckerberg's mind or do whatever, but what we can do is make sure that the way we interact with the social media, the way we interact with our locality, is providing a safe space for the community. And that is something we can actually do. We cannot change policy in the United States, for example, but what we can do is make sure that within our grasp, within our reach, within our locality, we create a safe space for people to be in. And for people of all orientations, of all genders, and so on and so forth. So I suppose the summary today of this point is I have been tempted to say, so this, I'm going off Facebook. Maybe that's not running away from a toxic environment. Maybe from us as allies is not the solution. Maybe actually we need to be present, and we need to try all we can to create a safe space for people within the constraints of that environment. Take from there what you will, and stay safe and have a lovely week.